New hope for people who rely on the sniff test to save fresh food. The tiny innovation that may help you avoid dumping perfectly good milk.
I want my community members for them to vote and let them come out of the shell that they're hiding in.
Untapped potential at the ballot boxes, why refugees may be a powerhouse on Election Day.
Pleasure, Luis.
Oh, my grandpa does that too.
Ready for their red carpet moment. The San Diego Latino Film Festival returns. The festival highlights channeling the way we define Latino cinema. KPBS Evening Edition starts right now. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabolsi. Tomorrow, U.S. Customs and Border Protection will review the case of a Mexican immigrant who died in 2010 after border agents shot him repeatedly with a taser. The incident went viral after bystanders leaked cell phone videos. KPBS Fronteras reporter Jean Guerrero has more on what his family wants to happen next.
CBP's new use of force board is reviewing the case of Anastasio Hernandez Rojas to determine if the use of force that led to his death was in line with policy or if there was misconduct. The board will make recommendations to the CBP commissioner regarding what lessons can be learned. In a statement, CBP said it will make the findings public when they're ready. Hernandez's widow, Maria Puga, says she wants CBP to admit wrongdoing. She says she feels this is important for her children, who are U.S. citizens.
It's a way of lightening their load. I've always said maybe nobody's going to jail, but maybe I can say this change was made because of this fight, and your father's death was not in vain.
The U.S. Department of Justice declined to prosecute last year, saying it lacked sufficient evidence to pursue federal charges against the agents involved in Hernandez's death. The Use of Force Review Board was established in 2014 to increase accountability and transparency for the agency in response to allegations of excessive use of force. Jean Guerrero, KPBS News.
Tough words from leaders of the Cal State system as they face a potential strike by professors and instructors next month. They're warning faculty members that it is illegal to promote the strike during their classes. The faculty's union and the Cal State system cannot agree on the size of pay raises for the union's 26,000 members. A vice chancellor says all campuses will remain open even if faculty members walk off the job. They're taking extra steps to minimize disruption to classes, including scheduling extra security. Wrongful convictions are costing San Diego millions of dollars. This, according to a study released today by researchers at UC Berkeley and the University of Pennsylvania. The data goes back to 1989. The city and county have paid out more than $10 million in settlements and outside legal fees. Overall, 3 decades of erroneous prosecutions have cost the state nearly $250 million. People up and down the state are trying to crack the code on California's dismal voter turnout. But some in San Diego see untapped potential in one voting bloc: refugees. As part of our California Counts election coverage, KPBS reporter Megan Burks looks at why this group may be a powerhouse at the ballot box.
Mariam Ali is making pasta in her San Diego home. She lives in the city's diverse Terralta neighborhood.
Because my kids, they love this stuff. Mommy, make the Alfredo sauce.
She pours the store-bought sauce into a pot, then spikes it with curry and ground African peppers. 25 years ago, Ali was begging nomadic tribes for a pot to boil what little food she had. She and her family had fled civil war in Somalia and were walking to a refugee camp about 200 miles from their home.
They took my house, they took my money, they took all my belonging things, and I escaped with nothing.
Ali went from seeing a government toppled in Somalia to living for years in a camp with no civic structure, just United Nations oversight. Today in the United States, she's a super voter. That means Ali has voted in every election since becoming a U.S. citizen in 2003. Her first vote for president went to Democrat John Kerry.
I was like, oh my God. We went to the county office and I didn't know what to do.
While voter turnout is particularly low among foreign-born Californians, community organizers based in Peralta have noticed something interesting. When refugees like Ali decide to become voters, they don't miss elections. A small survey of East Africans in San Diego shows 30% of those registered are super voters. That's compared to 20% of the state's voting population. And 3/4 are active voters, meaning they don't only show up for presidential elections like a lot of U.S.-born voters.
If I need something and if I don't vote, who knows me? Who knows my needs? No one.
Ali cares a lot about empowering women. She was pushed into an abusive marriage at age 14. She says her vote in this year's presidential election is going to Democrat Hillary Clinton.
I am very excited. Women can do what the men do, too, you know?
Ali also cares about rising college tuition and racial inequality. She's surprised those things don't draw more U.S.-born voters to the polls.
I want my community members, like who live in City Heights, for them to vote and let them come out of the shell that they're hiding in.
Noreen H. Green lives down the street from Ali. She says racial inequality is exactly why she hasn't voted since the 1990s.
I talk to refugees and they think this is the greatest country on earth. And I see it from a different perspective because I'm a Black American and my ancestors were brought here as slaves and worked 400 years for free. And that's how a lot of the wealth of this country was built. So I see it from that lens.
Green comes from a family of super voters, and her husband is a super voter. But Green says casting a ballot would mean supporting a system she considers unjust.
Young Black men and women being killed, and there really have been no consequences for that. The fact that you have to have millions, sometimes $1 billion to even run for president. So I don't vote because I don't believe anyone deserves my vote.
Ironically, Green is interning with a nonprofit that works to get out the vote during election years. It also organizes the community around social justice issues. Green says for her to vote, the system would have to look a lot different. And she says it will be those she organizes, the Black Lives Matter protesters, immigrant dreamers, and refugees like Miriam Ali, who will shape it.
I think it's important to empower people that they can make change and be leaders and create this mass of people that can make change, because it's going to take a mass movement.
Voting advocates in Peralta believe refugees are that mass to push for change at the ballot box. San Diego has resettled some 100,000 refugees since 1975. To them, that's 100,000 potential super voters. Megan Burks, KPBS News.
And video journalists Nick McVicker and Brian Myers contributed to that story. And you can find more of our California Counts election coverage at kpbs.org/CA Counts. A critical presidential contest shaping up now for Republican candidates in Florida. The prize, a winner-take-all primary. An aide with former Florida Governor Jeb Bush says he is meeting with all of the remaining GOP candidates except Donald Trump. Candidates are also courting a key voting bloc in the Sunshine State. Associated Press reporter Josh Replogle says one divisive issue may be a game changer.
Remember the old times?
In a photo op moment, Marco Rubio strolls into West Miami City Hall with his wife voting early ahead of next week's winner-take-all primary.
I mean, literally standing right outside in this sidewalk is where my career began in elected office. So it's an incredible privilege and honor to be able to vote for myself for president just a few blocks from where I grew up.
A reminder to Florida voters that he's counting on them to give his struggling campaign a boost. He's also counting on a group of voters whose support could be pivotal. Fellow Cuban Americans. There are nearly 800,000 Cuban American voters in the Sunshine State, many of them in South Florida, conservative and Republican, who backed the senator before.
Marco, for me, is the best.
Ted Cruz has also been playing up his Cuban heritage, his campaign opening 10 offices across the state, several in South Florida, and like Rubio, Cruz strongly opposes President Obama's policy to normalize relations with Cuba. But there's a growing divide within the Cuban American community in Florida, as shown by these recent protests in Little Havana.
Today, the polling that FIU has done, in particular, our Cuba poll, has demonstrated that, there is a great support for opening relations with Cuba.
Especially among younger Cuban Americans. The older generation, however, supports isolation until Cuba sees internal change.
The older Cuban, they don't really want to have the first community that came in the 60s and the 80s. I don't think they really want that interaction with the Cuban community. But the people nowadays, the newest one that have come and young people this generation, I think they do.
Those differences could open the door for Donald Trump, who has come out in favor of the new Cuba policy. A hard line with Cuba no longer a deciding factor for these influential voters. Joshua Plogel, The Associated Press, Miami.
There are lines of people paying respects to former First Lady Nancy Reagan today. Members of the armed services have carried her casket into her late husband's presidential library. The library in Simi Valley has invited the public to pay respects to Reagan, who will lie in repose before her burial in a private ceremony on Friday. A trio of former First Ladies, including Democratic presidential hopeful Hillary Clinton, are among those expected to attend the service. Current First Lady Michelle Obama will also be there. Helping San Diego's homeless find a home. County organizations providing housing for the homeless have received nearly $15 million in grants from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The largest local grant of about $2 million went to the San Diego Housing Commission. More than $250 million were given to organizations throughout the state of California. The best seat in the House to view oral arguments at the California Supreme Court may be in front of your computer. The court will begin streaming oral arguments starting in May. Chief Justice Tani Cantil-Sakaue announced the change yesterday in her annual State of the Judiciary address at the state capitol. She says it's part of an effort to maintain access, fairness, and diversity in the face of limited funding. New research from the California community colleges finds even students who don't complete certificates or transfer to four-year colleges can benefit economically. In a new study, the colleges looked at 86,000 students who took at least one class in order to improve their career skills. It found the average student's salary increased by $4,300 the year after taking courses. The median price of a home in San Diego County held steady in February, but it was 7% higher than last year. The San Diego Association of Realtors says the median price of $530,000. The median price for townhomes and condos was up 6% from a year ago. The association says the number of homes changing hands was down last month. Just over 1,300 homes were sold. The most expensive home sold in the county last month was a $17.7 million estate in the La Playa neighborhood of Point Loma. Coming up with a game plan to deal with flooding, experts at the Disaster Preparedness Academy say we may be seeing more thanks to El Nino. KPBS reporter Steve Walsh explains why San Diego homeowners need to be ready for anything.
It may not feel like it, but this is the worst El Nino on record. But that doesn't mean San Diego may see the worst flooding.
We've experienced flooding regionally in any type of year, La Nina, El Nino, or neutral year, and we really have to be prepared all of the time for flooding.
Highlighted in yellow, some of the worst flooding in San Diego happened in years when El Nino was at its weakest. Storms in July showed flooding can happen at any time. Not that the area is out of the woods this season. Among the suggestions for homeowners is to know whether or not they're in a floodplain. Also, not all drains are owned by local government. It may be up to you or your neighbor to keep them clear before the next rain comes. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
And surf's up along the San Diego coast. Large waves crashed by the beaches in Oceanside today. That's as people are drying out from the last El Nino storm. The high surf prompted authorities to issue a warning about rip currents that could catch novice swimmers by surprise. And it was another day in paradise here in San Diego. We had plenty of sunshine, but Steph Davis says a storm system may be headed our way on Friday. She has more on that in tonight's KPBS Weather Report.
Shaping up to be a pleasant Wednesday across the San Diego area. You'll notice largely dry conditions and clear skies across much of Southern California. However, off to our north, all of this Pacific moisture tracking in, helping to fire some clouds and showers across northern and central California. And unfortunately, we'll be dealing with some wet weather as we look ahead to our Friday. But over the next 24 hours or so, the weather should be very pleasant out there. Taking a closer look in at satellite and radar around home, you'll notice mainly clear skies from Borrego Springs south towards San Diego. We enjoyed a mix of clouds and sun today, and we'll enjoy largely dry conditions and clear skies as we head into tonight. Overnight low in Borrego Springs comfortable around 50 degrees. Temps in Mount Laguna falling back to the mid-30s. 41 and quiet tonight in Ramona. 46 and clear in Oceanside. Temperatures comfortably mild tonight in San Diego itself with an overnight low of 55 degrees. As I mentioned, another dry and seasonably mild day across much of Southern California for tomorrow. But take a look at this rain already creeping south towards the Bay Area, and that will be the case as we look ahead to our Friday. We're going to be dealing with some clouds and showers, so get out and enjoy it while you can tomorrow, because you'll probably need the umbrellas as we wrap up the work and school week. Here's a look at your 5-day outlook for the coast. Fog lifting for sunshine Thursday with highs comfortable in the upper 60s. Rain and even a rumble of thunder possible for your Friday. Quick break in the action for the weekend. That's definitely good news. And then more clouds and showers arrive along the coast for your Monday. 5-day outlook inland looks fairly similar. Fog lifting for sunshine Thursday with highs in the upper 60s. Spotty showers rolling through for your Friday afternoon. The weekend looks good. Saturday and Sunday partly sunny with highs in the mid-60s, and then more wet weather arriving for your Monday. 5-day outlook across the mountains. Partly sunny and 66 Thursday. Spotty afternoon showers on Friday. Partial sunshine and cooler for the weekend. And then a couple of showers once again arriving for your Monday. And your 5-day outlook for the desert. Partly sunny and very warm Thursday with highs flirting with 90 degrees. Largely dry conditions for your Friday and into the weekend. Saturday looks beautiful. Get out and enjoy it. High 75. Temperatures in the deserts will remain in the mid to upper 70s Sunday and into your Monday. Steph Davis, KPBS News.
And some sad news to share with you. The nation's first uterus transplant has failed. We first told you about the Cleveland Clinic's procedure last week. The 26-year-old woman was recovering until she experienced a sudden complication this week. Doctors removed the organ yesterday. The hospital is investigating what went wrong, and they say its clinical trial that aims to do 10 uterus transplants will continue. A minimally invasive way to remove congenital cataracts from babies. Scientists at UC San Diego Health say the technique has been developed, which also regenerates the lenses by using stem cells already in their eyes. The scientists say the congenital cataracts are a major cause of blindness in children. The 12 infants who went through the trial period developed clear lenses within 3 months. And the number of flu-related deaths continues to climb in San Diego. County officials confirmed 11 more deaths last week, bringing the total number of fatalities to 26. At this point last year, 84 people had died from flu complications. Thousands of influenza cases have been diagnosed this year. Flu vaccines are available at doctors' offices and pharmacies. Sacramento lawmakers are pushing for a tax to tackle obesity in California. The proposed bill would add a 2-cent tax increase on sugary drinks like soda. Beverage groups and small businesses oppose the bill, saying it's a tax that will unfairly target one product and neglect other products like fried foods.
Sugary beverages have no nutritional value. They're metabolized by the body differently. Liquid sugar, when it enters the body, goes straight to the pancreas and then is converted to fat. So it has specific qualities that call out for treating it differently. That's why the bill singles out sugary beverages.
Lawmakers say the tax may raise up to $3 billion annually. The money would go towards state health programs. So how do you check if your milk is fresh enough to drink? You may be one of the many Americans who relies on sell-by dates to determine when to throw it out. The Allegheny Front's Kara Holsapple introduces us to a professor who may have a better way to tell if food is actually fresh.
You know, I've been a scientist for a lot of years, and you have discovery. You see how the universe works. But to find something that actually could be extremely useful for people, it just gives life meaning. My name's Greg Kenning, and I'm a professor of physics at the Indiana University of Pennsylvania. So we've developed a sensor using nanotechnology which can determine the age of food and follow food as it goes through the supply chain into the stores and into your refrigerator, and be able to read out what the age of food is. They just look like thin films of metal. We're working with some people at MIT to hook it up to what's called RFID, radio frequency identification. The Easy Passes are RFID. So the idea is to use that technology, but to couple to our sensor, and then to be on every milk jug, on every piece of meat, fish, fruits, anything that decays with time and temperature. You can scan these with your cell phone. So the idea is that you would come in to buy your quart of milk, and instead of looking at the dates for the freshness, your cell phone would tell you what the freshest milk was in the whole system. You know, if people knew what was in their fridge and when to use it and when it was going to expire, we have no information like that. You just use it until you look at it and go, oh, this doesn't taste any good anymore. But if you had that piece of information eat daily fed to you, you would know when to use your food by. It's just a matter of where we're going. We're moving towards more efficiency, and we want to lower greenhouse gases, we want to lower our energy consumption, and I think this possibly goes towards all of those, and have healthier foods.
And this report was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
I'm Judy Woodruff. On the next news hour, the race for the White House moves closer to two key general election states, Florida and Ohio. That's Wednesday on the PBS NewsHour.
Well, what a sight. Sky gazers from around the United States jumped on a plane last night for the best spot to watch a total solar eclipse. A dozen eclipse enthusiasts booked a ticket with Alaska Airlines just to watch the moon completely block out the sun. The rare sight in the skies unfolded over parts of Indonesia and the Indian and Pacific Oceans. Remember the man behind the Fab Four? Beatles producer Sir George Martin died today. He was 90 years old, and he was the first producer to offer the group a recording contract and is often referred to as the fifth Beatle. Paul McCartney calls him, and I quote, "the most generous, intelligent, and musical person I've ever had the pleasure to know." The 23rd annual San Diego Latino Film Festival kicks off tomorrow night at Fashion Valley. KPBS film critic Beth Accomando has this preview.
The San Diego Latino Film Festival returns to Fashion Valley and the AMC 18 for the second year in a row to kick off its 23rd season. Prepare for celebrities, outdoor festivities, and of course, 165 features, documentaries, and shorts. On Thursday, March 10th, the festival opens with a trio of films, including Luis Guzman in Puerto Ricans in Paris.
Pleasure, Luis.
Oh, my grandpa does that too.
The films will be followed by an opening night concert and party at Music Box San Diego.
Let's go.
This year, Colombia is the country of focus, with 6 films, including Que Viva la Música, being showcased. The festival also has a Cine-Gay sidebar featuring films such as Viva, an Irish-Cuban co-production about drag performers in Havana. Also highlighted is Peter Greenaway's Eisenstein in Guanajuato, a multinational production with a British director about a Jewish-Russian filmmaker visiting Mexico.
Bienvenidos. Cañero is my official Guanajuato guide.
I have got everything that I desire.
The film's a daring selection that challenges viewers to think about how we define Latino cinema. Another challenging film from a veteran world-class filmmaker is Arturo Ripstein's Bleak Street, a black and white film about colorful characters and inspired by a true-life crime story. The festival also includes 24 documentaries such as La Buena Vida, set deep in the jungles of Colombia, where mining is severely impacting the lives of indigenous people. The 23rd annual San Diego Latino Film Festival runs March 10th through the 20th. Come. Films will screen at the Digital Gym Cinema on El Cajon Boulevard.
Por lo menos tienes algún nombre. Es que te parece Godzilla. Viva.
And at the home base of the AMC Fashion Valley 18. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
And you can look for Beth's Cinema Junkie podcast tomorrow, focusing on Latin genre filmmaking. And you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or find it at kpbs.org/junkie podcast. Now here's a look at what we're working on for tomorrow in the KPBS newsroom. On Morning Edition, dealing with a number of unmet medical needs in San Diego, the program that provides free surgeries to uninsured patients. That's tomorrow on KPBS Radio, and you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a great evening. Good night.